All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
Thank you all. Oh, my gosh. The Tuesday recorded audience, my favorite audience of the week. And Albert is here, everybody. What quirk of scheduling brought Albert into our mix? I don't know how it...
Albert, thank you.
I don't know how it happened, but it's terrific. Tony is usually a Monday, Tuesday guy, but today Albert is on board, and I must tell you, we've been beset by technical issues on this end. And we have the finest equipment. We've got all the stuff done. Our I's are dotted, our T's are crossed, and still I am victimized by these technical issues.
You know, they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
Exactly. I don't understand what happens, but because I am a professional and you're in the hands of someone who knows exactly what's happening, I intend to do the show as though I'm not being vexed constantly by technical issues.
Do you know who I am?
Yes.
Kind of a big deal.
I will show you how it's done, young people. You don't complain about it wall to wall. You do a little complaining, and then you move on. And that's what's going to happen today. What a show ahead, I must tell you. I've got David K. Johnston to kick off the second hour, and the news out of Mar-a-Lago and the world of Trumpland is coming so quickly that we are updating it even as this show is live right now. Yes, I'm aware of the breaking news concerning Trump, concerning the issues surrounding his effort to block the release of the special counsel final report. Apparently, it's voluminous. It's 2 volumes that detail both January 6th and the documents case, which has plodded on and sort of this really was, it plodded on in a Florida court, and then it was parked by his concierge judge, Eileen Cannon, who has again stepped in to block for him on this Jack Smith report release. So in other words, Smith prepared to release this report now at the end of his term, and in so doing, there is all of this detail about evidence regarding not just January 6th, but the document case. And as I've mentioned countless times on this show, the document case is particularly damning because it's easy to understand. I think a lot of these other issues, particularly the one in Manhattan, you know, the Judge Marchand case, that's a case involving bookkeeping, payoff of this porn star, the idea that by paying off the porn star, which, by the way, isn't illegal, you are withholding information from voters. That is illegal. And so that is how, in essence, Donald Trump ran afoul of the law. But also the way in which monies were moved is all part of that case. And already, even as I'm describing it to you, you're thinking, yeah, I don't know, man. It's just like, right, exactly. It's not simple enough to really pop. The documents case, I've always felt, and again, sorry, but messaging and complicated things are important when it comes to how they land with someone. And so the documents case is easy. It's straightforward, and it lands cleanly with people. Why did you take documents, federal documents, secure documents, top secret documents from the White House world down to the Mar-a-Lago world, where these same documents lived in bathrooms, ballrooms, bedrooms, closets, desks that were completely insecure? There's no explanation for it. There's absolutely, it's indefensible. You heard every manner of lame explanation for it when it first broke, but that's why I love that story and I love that case, to kind of make a case for the fact that this president, now president-elect, is incompetent and not concerned with law, not concerned with process, not concerned with anything but himself. So I'm sure I will be asked to meet with somebody who's in the new Trump purity team as a result of those remarks, but that's how I feel. Anyway, Judge Eileen Cannon has blocked the release of the Jack Smith report because Judge Eileen Cannon, you say, what does she have to do with the Jack Smith report? Well, that documents case involves specific people besides Trump. You know, he asked for documents to be moved, he asked for documents to be hidden, and because of that, the judge in the case can say, well, if you release that information, it leaves these people who are part of this case that we are supposed to be dealing with in Florida, it leaves those people vulnerable with information that's out there that wouldn't be otherwise. And so you see how Cannon can intercede on the part of Trump, and that's exactly what's happened. It just happened minutes ago. So, Albert, you actually have the, only because I'm on this, Albert, and then I'll double back and I'll deal with comments and Mo Direct, and Mo Direct left me a comment before the end of the show yesterday, and I've got some stuff to deal with. But just because I'm talking about this now, let me see what, in this press conference setting, he was taking questions, I believe it was down in Mar-a-Lago, not important. Trump was just informed of the Judge Cannon interceding on his behalf and parking this Jack Smith report, at least temporarily. Go ahead, Albert, please.
We have some breaking news. You may not be aware of this, but it looks like Cannon has blocked the DOJ from releasing the Smith report until further court proceedings. Get your thoughts on that.
That's a big story.
A federal judge blocked the DOJ from releasing Jack Smith's report in President-elect Donald Trump's classified documents case. Judge Eileen Cannon delayed the release while Trump's other legal battles play out.
So if they're not allowed to issue the report, that's the way it should be, because he was thrown off the case in disgrace. Why should he be allowed to write a fake report?
Trump's attorneys made the demand in a scathing letter after recently reviewing a draft of the 2-volume report. They made numerous objections to the report's release and said it functioned only as a, quote, partisan weapon. The letter was part of a court filing submitted in Florida on behalf of Trump's 2 co-defendants in his classified documents case. Justice Department regulations require special counsels to submit a confidential final report detailing their work, and the Attorney General has discretion over whether or not to release it. Recent special counsel reports have all been released to the public in redacted form. Concealing Smith's would break this norm. Trump's attorneys argued against Smith's initial appointment as special counsel, saying his release of a report would be unconstitutional. Smith's report would be a chance to get in a final word on his dual investigations of Trump related to his handling of classified documents and the January 6 Capitol riot. Smith was forced to terminate both cases after Trump's election win because of a DOJ policy that discourages prosecuting sitting presidents.
Good stuff. Thank you, Albert. So that really summarizes where we are now with Cannon having, as I say, interceded, blocked, it would appear, on Trump's behalf. Yet again, this Judge Cannon in Florida rides to his rescue. He doesn't want that report released. Of course, that report will go away when he becomes president. We'll get into more of this with David K. Johnston, the Pulitzer Prize winner, joins us at the top of the second hour of the show. We are a live show coming to you live across
The Mark Thompson Show.
Across the world of YouTube. We're also an audio podcast that you can grab along most audio platforms have it. And as I say, Albert is here. I am here. Kim continues off as a result of her father's passing. I told her to take all the time she needs. And I think her desire is to get right back to work. But I think, maybe at least take a few days to deal with family, to digest what's happening. I mean, it's a tumultuous thing. So Lucy McAllister, who is our favorite McAllister, does send to Kim McAllister thoughts on the passing of her father and a $20 super chat. Thank you, Lucy. We love you and appreciate that. We are a crowdfunded show, so super chat, super stickers, we make a big deal out of on this show, as we do those people who are part of our community of Patreon and PayPal supporters. Those are the people who we are so much in debt to because we count on you every month, and that's why we scroll names at the end of the show, all of our supporters. at the end of every show are acknowledged. Trump is clearly mimicking Putin with his ambitions to take Greenland by force. Tony Ladowdy with a $5 super chat. I'm going to get to Greenland in just a second, as a matter of fact, but I'm glad that you mentioned it because I am, thank you so much, Courtney. Courtney's just come in with, again, we've had all these technical issues, and it's been a very rough day. My chit mug is here, and I'm looking forward to being able to, this is a, all right. Yeah, do you want to, thank you very much. All right. I got a piece of, what would you call that? It was a comment, Albert, wasn't it? It was
The Mark Thompson Show.
I got a comment yesterday. Thank you, Courtney. This is my Coachella Valley coffee, which I am absolutely, because of the technical issue, I don't have my normal Coachella Valley heavenly music playing, but I'll put this right here. It's delicious. Wow. Very nicely done. We got we work very hard, and we did scramble yesterday for a lot of different news as we are doing today. But what's interesting to me is that something that I had expected I might comment on was picked up on by Mo Direct, who wrote yesterday. This is at 1:15, so we're off the air now. Okay, this is the last thing. We just said goodbye. We're on live from 11 to 1 on the West Coast. So these are West Coast times you're seeing, 1:15 p.m. 2 to 4, obviously, in the East, etc. Mo Direct at the end of our show. Not even a single word about the Golden Globes in the show today, Mark? Are you going to pick on the city that supports you and not cover events in your industry? Just a ponder, he says. Wow. I mean, I'm surprised.
Seriously, what the
I'm surprised. But he's kind of right. I had planned to talk about the Golden Globes yesterday because they had just gone down the night before, and I got caught up in this stuff, in Trump, Garland, media, bias, all the stuff that we talked about yesterday. It was a pretty busy show. And I think Mo Direct is kind of right. I should have commented on the Golden Globes. They were kind of a big deal, only because there was a lot going on. There was a big Hollywood night. They're kind of imagining the Golden Globes. They got a lot of stars to show up. The Hollywood Foreign Press is a complete, that's the organization the Golden Globes are based upon or organized around. So the Hollywood Foreign Press gives out awards under the aegis or under the flag that they fly of the Golden Globes. Okay, that's the Hollywood. Now, they're a completely concocted organization for years. I mean, and it's like 70 people. There are a bunch of payoffs involved. There were biases involved. There was allegation of racism, all of this stuff. I mean, they were essentially exposed in the last decade as this one-dimensional organization that is made up of a few handfuls of people, as I've just described. And so everybody dropped the Golden Globes like a bad habit. They do find their way back onto television. They've now, as I said, been reimagined, and they're headed up by new people, and there's new blood. They got out with the old, in with the new, and so you have the rebirth of the Golden Globes in this way. And so I was impressed, actually. Now, that rebirth started last year, I think, with... what was his name? The comic what is his? What's his name? Albert. He hosted last year, and he had kind of a rough ride in the room. Nikki Glaser hosted this year, and she was brilliant. I thought she was really great. She had really sort of piercingly edgy stuff, but at the same time, it seemed to be done in a way that.
The host last year, by the way, was Joe Coy, who's
Joe
Filipino.
Coy. That's it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm sorry,
Filipino
Joe. I couldn't
comedian.
think of your name in the moment. Joe Coy, who is funny, and I feel like I just remember he said a couple of things that particularly didn't land, and he had a little bit of a rough ride. So she came on, and I thought she was terrific. She started the night, and you need to start with something that pops, and she started the night by saying, Welcome to the Golden Globes, Ozempic's biggest night, I think was her joke. And I thought that was very funny. And then I thought she went from there just beautifully. That was her deal. She came out in costume as the Pope at one point and sang what was a takeoff on a Wicked song, popular instead of popular, and it was funny. I have notes. I have things I would change, I haven't seen most of the things that got those Golden Globe awards, but have you? I clearly need to see Shogun. Have you seen Shogun, Albert, yet?
I saw the first few episodes, very good, and it's long, so it's at least you have some time to watch. But it just felt long, but it's good.
Yeah, and of course it's a lot of there are a lot of episodes, so you better be in for the long haul. Yeah, you're right. But anyway, I definitely well, I hope I can get to as many of these shows that won as I can. I mean, just a tremendous amount of time that is spent doing this stuff. The Brutalist is a movie that I want to see. It was very well reviewed here on this show by the Culture Blaster. And Amelia Perez, 10 awards. It's a weird kind of, it's not in English, it's in Spanish, I think. It's a musical comedy, and it involves, I think, a trans person. I'm a little unclear on it, but I'm quite intrigued now that it's done so well. So the Golden Globes, to the extent that they're designed to improve the visibility of certain projects and, tempt you with the kind of lavish praise that many of these received, it worked. I want to go see that. I want to see Flow, which is the animated project that was very well reviewed by the Culture Blaster, Michael Snyder, and it's about a cat, and we love anything about cats. So anyway, the answer to questions, Mo Direct and others, I was impressed. I don't know. The Substance, I want to see that, the Demi Moore movie. I understand it. It's very, and Michael Snyder made this point too. He said it's, make you uncomfortable. It's very kind of creepy. But in any case, that's my word on the Golden Globes. I did watch them. I have notes, but I thought Nikki Glaser was really quite good. Mark is right. Besides Shogun, I did not recognize 90% of the shows nominated. Yeah, it's just one of those things, says Kurt. I will talk more about it with the Culture Blaster when he rolls in on Friday. And more about the end of the week a little bit later. But
The Mark Thompson Show.
I also, I thought Mark would like Flow, was David Katz, voiceover, because it's about a cat, yeah. Shogun was dope, says Mars. Yeah. Apparently Shogun's really great. So, there is also word, I guess, that Pat Thurston has left KCBS. I'm seeing that in the chat. You saw that, right, Albert? I don't know.
I actually saw the tweet. Let me find the tweet. She posted something on it.
Oh, did she?
I saw it last night.
Yeah.
But she might have a time slot for us during the week now. She has so much time.
Yeah, she might be able to join regularly. That would be great. And certainly she can join. She's said she'd love to jump on with us. Anytime I ask, she's always on board. So we'll get her. We'll get her here soon. I have a program note about today's show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
One of my favorite things that was born of Donald Trump's ascendance, not much good, frankly, came with his ascendance. But the discovery of a comic who is a politically astute guy, that discovery accompanied the ascendance of Donald Trump. I'm talking about J.L. Cauvin. He spells his name Cauvin. And if you go on social media and find his stuff, he's very funny. So he had a podcast, and he still does have a podcast, I believe, in which he riffs as Trump. Now, he does an impression of Trump that's really good. And when you're just listening, it's scary how he's got the breathing and the pattern of speech, all of these intricacies to the way Trump is. Coven has it. And beyond that, he riffs for a long time. I mean, that's not easy. In character. And he's funny. So you're funny and you're in character. Then I saw his political takes when he's not doing an impression. And he's a very sharp guy. So we invited him to join, and he will join in, I think it'll be about, what time does JL get here?
11:30.
In 3 minutes? Oh, okay.
Yeah. A few minutes.
Thank you. Somebody wake me.
I want to listen to the
Yeah, okay. Courtney's here, and she's listening because she likes JL Coven. So, all right, good stuff. Anyway, JL will join in minutes. So.
The Mark Thompson Show.
So did I address the Mo Direct thing and the fact that JL Coven is coming here? The only last thing I have to tell you, because I did start the show with the dynamic between Trump, Eileen Cannon, that emerging case, the release of the final report from Jack Smith. If you missed it, I've already touched on it, but we're going to really get into that with David K. Johnston, who joins us top of the hour. Bill Mann will join us in the second hour to talk about the resignation of Trudeau in Canada. I guess for most of us, it's, depending on whatever involvement we've had or degree to which we're connected with Canadian news, it may or may not have landed with us as a significant event. But Bill Mann will put us in some kind of framework. He'll talk about the Trudeau resignation and why it's a sign of a bigger trend worldwide. So we'll kind of get into that in the second hour as well. That'll be after David K. Johnston. So there is a whole lot still to come as we continue today. Smash the like button, which is the thing to do on YouTube if you are listening and watching on YouTube.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Yeah, smash it with your iron rod. Give it a thumbs up. It costs you nothing. Thank you. So again, touched on Jack Smith. We'll do more with Pulitzer Prize winner David K. Johnston. And we'll get into some more Trump news as, sadly, Trump is making news every which way. I did want to mention the Greenland thing, Albert, because it is such a remarkable thing to, I mean, the guy's not president yet. And, of the things that he's, taking a wrecking ball to, foreign diplomacy is one of them. He's playing out so much of this just in the public, in these pronouncements, in these statements, in these things related to that which you really wouldn't think an incoming president would necessarily be concerned with. And more to the point, I mean, you wouldn't even think voters care. I mean, nobody voted for Trump because they thought, he's going to bring Greenland to the United States. I mean, I just don't even think it was in the list of 100 things that people cared about. But Trump mentions it and has stayed with it and apparently is doggedly determined to get Greenland. Here is Trump, I believe, talking about it in Mar-a-Lago today. Go ahead, Albert.
But we've won most of the cases, so we're very happy about
No,
that.
this is the Jack Smith. Oh, here it is. Okay, good. You got it. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I interrupted. Go ahead.
Your position is clear, but have you directed your staff to take specific actions to draw plans? And can you elaborate again? You didn't rule out military coercion.
Well, we need Greenland for national security purposes. I've been told that for a long time, long before I even ran. I mean, people have been talking about it for a long time. You have approximately 45,000 people there. People really don't even know if Denmark has any legal right to it. But if they do, they should give it up because we need it for national security. That's for the free world. I'm talking about protecting the free world. You look at, you don't even need binoculars. You look outside, you have China ships all over the place. You have Russian ships all over the place. We're not letting that happen. We're not letting it happen. And if Denmark wants to get to a conclusion, but nobody knows if they even have any right, title, or interest. The people are going to probably vote for independence or to come into the United States. But if they did do that, then I would tariff Denmark at a very high level.
All right, thank you, Albert. So he's shaking up the Greenland snow globe, and we can follow up on that in a bigger way. I have a reaction from high-profile GOP. Now he's just a commentator. Steve Forbes. Remember Steve Forbes, the rich guy? He's the Forbes behind Forbes magazine, of course. He had a way in which Trump actually could acquire Greenland, and I'll play that for you a little bit later, but I don't want to get too far behind. But this is the stuff that, again, Trump focuses on for some reason. Somebody mentioned Greenland to him, probably. I don't know why he ends up in this place, but so he does. Those are his latest remarks on Greenland, and he doesn't rule out military force. I mean, this is the guy who many felt, he's going to get us out of these wars and these military conflicts, and so far he seems like something of a shoot-'em-up cowboy. But
The Mark Thompson Show.
I was mentioning to you before, one of my true guilty pleasures with the emergence of Donald Trump the first time was the discovery of a comic who not only does an impression of Trump, but does like the breathing, does the pattern of speech, all the things related to the way in which Donald Trump both speaks and skips from point to point. There's so much in that Trump impression. And he then will riff for minutes at a time, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, even longer. They did a podcast, which I used to listen to every day. The podcast had to be an hour. It was, and it was clearly just an improv thing. Then I started watching this comic's stuff online, and he does stuff both as Trump, and then he does political commentary when he's not doing Trump. And his political commentary is incisive and brilliant. And so I thought we've got to get him on the show, even just when he was doing the Trump impression I wanted. But now I realize, gosh, the guy has got some great takes on things. So he is here now. How about it for J.L. Colvin, everybody?
Hey, thank you very much. What a nice intro. Jeez.
Look, it's true, man. I will tell you, I felt like I was an early adopter on you. I don't know how early an adopter I really was, but when I found your podcast, it was funny. It was clearly something that was growing. Wasn't it, JL, at the beginning of things, you really, I think, took off with that podcast particularly. Am I right?
Yeah, the podcast. Well, the funny thing is we were doing the podcast for about a year and a half, and I liked doing it. It's called Making Podcasts Great Again. I enjoyed doing it, but we really plateaued at an extremely small number of listeners.
I see.
And then a video I did as Trump went viral at the very beginning of the pandemic. And because I had I wouldn't even call it foresight, because nobody knows a video is going to go viral. You don't say, oh, this is the one. Because if you had the keys to it, why would I wait 16 years into my comedy career? Like, I'm slow burning this. I want the perfect moment. And I tagged the podcast in the video, literally not thinking more than a few hundred people would see it. 10 million plus saw it. And then our numbers went from like a few hundred a week to like 20. It was like for a good 5-6 month stretch, we were at like 20,000, 25,000 a week, which was great. We've come down to earth again, but it's like my Trump work has fallen, but Trump seemingly has risen again, which is an odd thing. It's like, if only I had committed all these crimes instead of doing safe, non-criminal comedy, I would rise like a phoenix.
Yeah, his story is a remarkable one. I mean, it's unprecedented in all of politics. I don't want to embarrass you, so I won't ask you to do it, but I will. Albert, I sent you. This is a little JL, and what I want you to.
So you can embarrass me. It's okay.
Okay. This is his most recent video, or at least it's pitched that way. I think it's just in the last day or so, and you'll see that it's so straightforward, and yet it's just it's a treat. Here's a little bit, just a minute or two.
Oh, peacefully punched police
This is about
officers.
January 6th. Yeah.
Peacefully, it's called peace. Peacefully broke windows and peacefully took turds on desks and came in with peaceful zip ties to peacefully assault and possibly peacefully lynch Mike Pence. It's called peace. So Jan 6th, everyone, white people have the day off from school, okay? And also delusional Latinos. You know, like remember that guy?
This is
who
stop
ran
for
the
a second.
Proud
This is,
Boys
he's
or something?
pitching. Yeah, he's pitching it as a national holiday. He thinks J6 should be a national holiday.
To
is Donald
compete
Trump.
with Juneteenth.
Yeah, that's right. To compete with Juneteenth. He said, "What the hell is going on?" I wanted to play the whole thing. We just don't have enough time. Go ahead, keep going, Albert. A little bit. We'll just finish
That
it out.
case, people like him can have the day off too, but it's to celebrate peace and love and freedom, and to never have a horrible day like what the Democrats did to us and Mike Pence did to us on Jan 6th. So freedom today as I get certified to be president, but Jan 6th, get ready, white kids and delusional Latinos, you will have a beautiful day off. It'll be like a snow day. Even if it doesn't snow, Jan 6th will be like, it'll be the snow day because even if it's not snowing, it will be overflowing with whites. So thank you. I look forward to pardoning people and getting away with crimes. Bye-bye.
Yeah, and look, there's a cottage industry in Trump impressions. I get it. I mean, everybody does one. Actually, when you started with yours, there weren't a lot of people doing it. There were, and now everybody's perfected or whatever. But what you got is the riff, JL. I mean, it's just a brilliant riff. You just
thank you.
Yeah,
I just try. It's one of those things where you just try to, it's a difficult thing because I completely understand when people are saying they're tired of it or they see too much of it. And you just hope that between the ticks, the accuracy, and then what I bring sort of with 21 years of legitimate stand-up experience, like you hope to infuse it with enough kind of top tier content that people still see it as above the fray, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it really is sort of, once you get an impression, it is what you say, so it's terrific what what you have Trump saying is you just pull back the curtain on who he is. I mean, it's such a, that's the genius of it.
And I don't know if that says something horrible about me at this point, to be honest, but what is it? If you stare into the abyss too long, it stares back or something. Like I may be at that point with Trump, but like I just put one up before coming on here and that's the advantage, having it sort of in my mind perfectly, is the ability to be like, oh, breaking news, 4 minutes later, I've got a video out. And I just did him angrily responding to Melania's $40 million Amazon deal. He's sort of suspicious. What did you do for Bezos to get that much money? Is the tenor of the you remember Indecent Proposal? Remember Robert Redford? He gave Demi Moore $1 million. That was actually a good deal by Demi Moore because she was with Woody Harrelson, who she should skip to Redford for free, and she actually got $1 million out of him. And all of a sudden, Melania is getting $40 million out of Bezos. So what the hell did you give Bezos? Because he's sort of bald like Woody Harrelson. So what? No, excuse me. It's a simple question. It's a nice question. I know you're not strong on English. That's one of the things I like about you, darling. But darling, hello, darling. Can you please tell me, and please answer in the form of a sir, what the hell did you give Bezos for $40 million? Thank you.
Oh my God. There you go. Oh my God, that's great. That's just terrific. So, I mean, what's weird is the lunacy is juxtaposed against the intense seriousness of this guy taking power and, reconstituting this nation as something that it's never been. I mean, weaponizing the Justice Department, weaponizing, I think, the IRS is something he already did. I mean, he went after FBI agents, I think, through the IRS in his first administration. And all the while pointing the finger at Democrats as those who are weaponizing those agencies. Not to mention bringing into his administration utter incompetence, people who are either a wild security risk or clueless, or just good looking. I mean, I think Hegseth only got the role because it literally was cast like you'd cast a Hollywood movie. Like that's the guy I want to play
casting.
the role.
The problem is he's the guy who central casting would cast as the date rapist. So it's like, yes, good job on casting depending on the role.
And it's scary. And you do a lot of, and I wanted to ask you about this because I think these are only sort of recent discoveries I've made. You've done, you do clean takes when you're not doing an impression of Trump, you're not riffing, you're not necessarily entertaining, you're just providing analysis, like hot takes, and there are these really clean takes. So how often do you do those? Where do you do those, and how do you balance that?
I think I have 2 podcasts a week. So the other one is called Rain on Your Parade. That's me as me. And you'll find a lot more political takes there. Not to give you too much of my bio, but like I was a prosecutor out of law school. I went to Georgetown Law School. So I'm not the conventional sort of comedy path, but they've been like parallel paths of mine since law school, because I started doing comedy during law school. And I've just been always very interested, and I read a lot. And it's just, to me, it's one of these things where the frustrating thing about Trump to me has been how much of an outlier he is from normal, decent discussion. Like the fact that we not only didn't come to a consensus that this guy wasn't worthy of the office and of our time, but that he actually now, after committing crimes of both personal and political nature, is won the popular vote. And I think the take that I put out like right after the election was a kind of a fed up, exasperated take of, enough with the "this is not," and it, many people have made this take since, but it was kind of this is who we are. It may not be who you are individually, but when he wins the popular vote, we no longer have a sort of moral victory to claim. Like, well, at least it was just the weird electoral college that gave it to him. There is a fundamental problem with our society, I think. And yes, you can point to all sorts of policy issues and things Democrats may have done in the past, but when an objectively horrible human being, incapable of doing the job, cares about himself, and has I would say he has none of the characteristics that you want in a good leader. He has plenty of the characteristics in a historical villain leader, but none of the things, if you were teaching a course on good leadership, he possesses zero of those qualities. And the fact is, I truly believe, without getting too sociological here, I think when you look at how our country has shifted, I believe the introduction of the smartphone in 2007, with the election of Barack Obama, with then the acceleration of social media, created a story. And I'm not blaming Obama. I'm an Obama fan, but I'm saying that was sort of a catalyst to trigger some fears in certain segments of the American population. And then the smartphone, coupled with a few years later, the real intense rise of social media, gave us this, like, now we lack attention. We lack attention span, attention to detail. And we now get to this point where Trump, I believe, and I've said this, could only become president in this time. Every other generation in America, from the founding fathers to Obama, would have said, no, this guy is unfit. But with social media distracting us, hyper sharing of BS, our attention to detail, our attention spans diminishing, only a carnival barker preaching hate, but doing it in an admittedly charismatic, unseen until now method, can you have Trump. The founding fathers, sure, they would have said, we love the racism, but you're a coward and you're not a statesman. The Civil War, we love the racism, we love that, but you are a rich fat cat who is not defending his own property. World War II, deferments. Vietnam, deferments. You don't read. You're a horrible human being. You're dumb. But in 2016, we reached, and it helped that he was following a black man and going against a woman. So it was this tide of untenable history, like scaring his supporters. And I'm like, yes, because of course, Barack Obama, the Harvard-educated half-black man raised by his white grandparents, was too black and terrifying for a portion of this country that they couldn't even believe he was born here. So I think Trump is a man at the exact right moment of history to do as much wrong as possible. The end.
Well, boy, what a great take. And isn't that what politics is? There's a pendulum swing, and kind of what you're adding to the general pendulum swing, from conservative to liberal, from various policies that might be associated with a war effort. I'm thinking of out of Vietnam, out of Watergate. The swing was the other way. That's how Carter took office, I think, in reaction to Watergate and to sort of the perceived corruption of the Nixon administration. Of course, this guy makes Nixon look like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Sure. Even W, I'm sorry to interrupt, but even W came in. I think there was a desire to we have as a country this desire to like view change as a necessary good thing. Like, even though the economy is going great, we need change just because we're bored people. And that used to be a decade-long boredom. Now we're bored within hours as a society. And I think even Bush came in, and some of that mandate was he had to give license to some liberals or independents saying, I'm a compassionate conservative. He at least had to present himself a certain way. And he presented himself as a more moral option than the remnants of the Clinton administration. And now, and I've said this, and Bill Maher actually made this joke unknown to me, but I did it on a recent special where I said, Democrats have become America's single mom. And Trump is the ultimate embodiment of Republicans as the deadbeat dad, where it's like somehow Democrats have to educate the population, take care of the population, get everything done, and not be too annoying while doing it. And Republicans can swoop in every 4 years and scream, guns, freedom, prosperity. And then we go, yes, you're the best, Dad. Mom, you're so boring, Mom. That's why Dad left. I want to hang out with Dad. And then Dad leaves us at a game to hook up with a concession worker or an ex-flame, and we're lost at the game going, what do we do? And Mom drives to pick us up, and all we do is yell at Mom on the way home, ignoring the fact that Dad abandoned us at a public event, and we're 10.
That's absolutely terrific. That's absolutely terrific, and it's really spot on. This is what you do so well. I mean, JL boils it down, and then he'll find parallels that will both make you laugh and yet make you think, yeah, that's exactly what's happening. I mean, it's really wild. As you look at this guy and this incoming administration populated by, as I've suggested, this rogues gallery of crazy, of those who have a fealty to him, but also seem committed to his policy of vengeance. I mean, he may indeed pardon everybody or many of those involved in January 6th, turn the January 6th situation that is a day, and it's kind of interesting that we're talking to you the day after. I mean, it's a day that it really is should be filled with a kind of reflection and a solemnity that's associated with what happened. And instead, you kind of think, as Donald Trump is reimagining it, that it may end up being what Hitler did with that confrontation when he was taking on the Weimar Republic. His thugs were taking on the German cops. They ended up arresting him, and then when he came to power, turned that day where his thugs were beating up the German cops, turned that into a day of reverence and a day of celebration. I mean, Trump may try to do the same thing. That's why I loved your take on what January 6th was going to become.
Yeah, it's but at least it wasn't an unattended CVS in Minnesota burning, because we know that is, after 9/11, I think the CVS on fire in Minnesota is the Republicans' biggest national tragedy. I think it's disgraceful. I mean, it's beyond disgraceful. I think with this incoming administration, and I hate saying this because I think I'm still too decent a person to actually wish tragedy on the nation or on families, but what they did during Trump's first term was actually, I think, a disservice to the voters and a disservice to the Constitution. If you can remind me his name, the guy Miles, and I'm forgetting his last name.
Teller.
Miles Teller. Is that Miles Teller? Isn't he an actor?
No, honey, Miles Teller's an actor, but that's the only Miles I know.
Whiplash, not quite my tempo.
Courtney, can you tell JL the Miles from the Trump administration who kind of said, "Hey, we're the adults in the room, we're keeping an eye on thing." I don't know if he was the guy who said that. Was he? JL?
He wrote the op-ed. He was the one who wrote the anonymous op-ed.
Yeah,
and it was this kind of like, "Hey guys, there are people in the administration still trying to keep things on the right track and keep him from doing his worst impulses." And if I can put my lawyer hat on, well, that's not what the Constitution says. Right. It says if you vote for this madman, then you do, and the madman is doing things within that are Miles Taylor.
Miles Taylor. Everybody.
It's so
Miles.
close.
I was close.
It's either Top Gun Maverick or the coward working for Trump. One of those two. And it's one of these things where you go, you were supposed to do what he said and show him things when he receives a document or has a decision to make. You don't steal it from the president's desk. But what they did was they softened the impact of Trump so that there could be this. Now, after January 6th, there should have been no revisionist history, but apparently there was room to grow and say, it wasn't so bad. Well, now all the people he's putting in, nobody's going to hide anything. They're going to run to him because they are in full agreement with, hey, you want to separate families? Here, we found a really cool way to do it. We can make it a reality show. Let's go. So I think it's going to be too late. We're going to finally see we had Trump heroin in the first term. We're going to get Trump fentanyl this term. It's just going to be the pure, uncut, most dangerous version of it. And it'll be too late. Like, we gave it to him. He won a higher percentage this time. He won the popular vote. So while he doesn't have a traditional mandate, he certainly has a mandate compared to his first term.
Yeah. And I think you make such a good point about the fact that there were, and we don't even know what, if you will, safeguards or things were in place, keeping him from his worst instincts. Mm-hmm. And this time there'll be nothing keeping him. In fact, he's surrounded himself with an amen choir. I mean, it's just, he's put in place all of those loyalists who.
But don't forget the strong backbone of Mike Johnston in the House. Don't you forget him. I mean, all this has made me think of is, boy, oh boy, if we still have history books in 50 years, they're actually going to be quite complimentary to Mike Pence. And I did not see that coming. A few years ago, but Mike Pence did two things. Whenever anybody would say, oh, we shouldn't, if Trump gets removed from office, it'll be even worse with Pence. And I think now we all know that's not true. And I always said the two things Mike Pence was going to do. One was hand over power peacefully. That's a big one. And the other one he was going to do is that he actually handled COVID the way I would want a president to handle COVID. Clear, with a tone of comfort, and he wasn't trying to manipulate facts and tell people to inject disinfectant into their veins. And I think Trump got jealous of Pence getting on air every day, and he took over and turned it into a joke. So when it comes to the big things that a president does, fighting a pandemic and handing over power peacefully, I think Mike Pence would have gotten strong grades on those two things.
Yeah, it's funny. You're right. I mean, who would have thought that you'd embrace a guy who defunded Planned Parenthood in his state when he was governor and funded the gay re-education therapies when he was governor.
At least those kids would still be alive to get conversion therapy from Mike Pence if Mike Pence were president. Okay, that's the glass half full bigotry that I'm looking for from my Republican candidates.
JL, you're so great. Listen, we've got a lot of great feedback on you. People saying, have him on every week.
Oh, cool. So, thank you, people.
Yeah, really. So I want you to run down again, please, in our last minute or so. Tell us all the different places you're doing all the different things that you're doing.
Great. Okay, so obviously I have 2 weekly podcasts. Making Podcasts Great Again is the one I do as Trump, and the other one is Rain on Your Parade. So if you like me doing the Trump comedy, that's your podcast. And if you like more social commentary, political commentary, and jokes, that's Rain on Your Parade. Obviously, I'd love for people to listen to both. And then jlcomedy.com is my website. You can, follow me on all the socials. I blog fairly frequently. My next couple of gigs, I don't have a ton of gigs on the calendar right now. I had a really busy fall, winter, but I'll be in Charlotte in February, and I'll be in Vegas in March, and then obviously hoping to add a bunch of stuff there. And can I plug 2 more things that are very related to this?
Yeah, absolutely. This is the moment.
Oh, great. Nice. Yeah, that's me and my website. DictatorforadayShow.com is a musical that I was in as Trump. And I say this with as much humility as I can because it's a very arrogant statement. I was tremendous in it, and it's probably the best thing I've ever done. So if people who like my Trump stuff, if they like my Trump stuff, they'll love that. And for people who just can't get enough of me continually plugging things, on January 20th, Inauguration Day, January 20th, I am releasing my first stand-up special as Trump. I've done 8 stand-up albums. Can I give you the title? It's been filmed. It went really well. The title that will be released, and you can just subscribe to my YouTube channel now. It's called Inauguration is My Favorite N-Word. That's Donald Trump's first stand-up special being released the day he becomes the 47th president. So I'd love for that to get viral, etc.
That is just terrific. Albert, can you link to all this stuff that JL under this video? Or can you put together a few
the only
links
two
for
links,
me?
just to make it simple, the only 2 links, everything I do from specials to YouTube links to social media, etc. JLcomedy.com has everything on that site. And then dictatorforadayShow.com is just for that show. It's going to be released, sometime probably in February.
So Albert, we'll link to his main website under this video.
I might just,
right?
he has a whole bunch of links under one link. I might just post that one link.
Okay, we'll post the one link just to keep it easy for everybody listening and watching, and you can follow JL. There he is, the handsome devil.
Sometimes.
Locomotion says, this is for my introduction to JL. $2 for the show. Thank you. Very good. Look at that. JL, you're making money for us.
Well, that's what I do. I don't make it for myself, but I'm like Robin Hood. I rob from myself to give to others.
JL, thanks, JL. People, great guest. You can, if you want to feel good about yourself, go through and listen to and read some of these great comments about you.
Well, I'm a stand-up comic, so I will single out the one comment that says, "I've heard better."
Yeah, it's true. What is it about the comic mind? What a great CV you have. It's so weird that you're such a studied guy, and somehow
weird is such a nice way to put it. My parents did not use the word weird as I pursued stand-up comedy with vigor.
Yeah, it probably had to be. It was probably a tough sell. But look at this. One of your best guests ever. Thanks for the laughs. Knit one, purl one. Wow.
Take that, David K. Johnston.
You must come back and visit again. Can I?
Oh, absolutely. Anytime. I'd love to. I'm sorry it took so long to do, but sometimes us super successful comedians have to give back by working day jobs.
Of course, I fully understand. All right, so Courtney, you'll make it happen with JL again, and so Courtney's in touch with you, and he's coming to Las Vegas. Maybe a chance to see him live. Yeah. Okay. I'll never see Courtney again. She'll just follow JL around the whole time.
Or we can just gamble if you don't like my performance. You can just
I meet all of my best boyfriends on this show through Mark.
Yeah. There you go.
Oh, nice.
Karen Combs says, "Thanks, JL. I love educated comedy." Karen Combs with $10 for the show too.
Wow.
Yeah. I'm telling you, JL's good for business. All right.
I prefer funny comedy, but I'll take educated comedy.
Look at you. How can you take that and not be complimented? But that's the disease there. Right? All right. You're the best, my friend.
Thank you so much. Great meeting you on here. It was wonderful. I look forward
I'll look forward to the next time. We'll do it again soon. All right. JL Colvin, everybody. JL Colvin. All right.
The Mark Thompson Show.
It was great. I loved it.
How would you handle this? We could try ignoring it, sir.
Morning.
You cannot say you love your country.
Where are my weed smokers at?
Stay at home and get baked.
Right on. He was great. Yeah. Any gigs at Harvard, somebody's asking. And that's a kind of a great question from Michael D. Any gigs at Harvard? Talk to the Harvard social program organizers and get him in there. Really great. Terrific. Great take. Dude, I need a Dictator musical t-shirt today. I'm hitting your site now, says Scott Rittenberg. Yeah. Well, we're good for JL business, as it turns out. JL Coven and David K. Johnston. How fortunate we are, says commentator. Yeah, what a day, huh? We're going to bring back a true crime corner probably once a month. We just are getting, there's things are really, it's hard to pack everything into the show. So we're kind of taking a step back. Also, Courtney's kind of busy. So that's the answer to that, Chris from Menlo Park. I did want to update one thing because JL mentioned, and I think it's true, you know, that the rise of Donald Trump didn't exist in a vacuum. It existed with a specific sort of history, and it existed with the advent of social media being so available to us on our phone and the bite-sized media facts, okay, being put out and digested by a public that has a very short attention span that's getting shorter. And you'll appreciate this in that spirit. Meta will end fact-checking program in a shift that they've announced ahead of Trump's term. The social networking giant will stop using third-party fact-checkers on Facebook, Threads, and Instagram. Instead, they'll rely only on users to add notes to posts. So if you're just trying to get propaganda out there unchecked, Meta is the place for you. Facebook, Instagram, and Threads will rely only on users posting corrections as opposed to third-party organizations that they now employ to flag false or misleading content. The reversal, says the New York Times, of the years-old policy is a stark sign of how the company is repositioning itself for the Trump presidency in the weeks before it begins. Meta described the changes with the language of a mea culpa. Listen to this. Joel Kaplan, Meta's newly installed global policy chief, said in a statement that the company wanted to, quote, undo the mission creep that has made our rules too restrictive and too prone to over-enforcement. It's time to get back to our roots around free expression, said Mark Zuckerberg. The company's current fact-checking system, he says, has, quote, reached a point where it's just too many mistakes and too much censorship. Yeah, it's not that there's too much propaganda, too many falsehoods. It's that there is just too much censorship of those falsehoods. That's what the problem is. He said there will be more bad stuff on Facebook and on these other platforms like Instagram as a result of this decision, but, quote, the reality is that this is a trade-off. It means that we're going to catch less bad stuff, but we'll also reduce the number of innocent people's posts and accounts that we accidentally take down. I'd suggest that this is all part of an organized effort on the part of these gillionaires who run social media platforms to curry favor with Donald Trump and the incoming administration. I mean, since he's come in, Zuckerberg, Bezos, of course, Musk is already, you know, the co-president. They've all thrown themselves at Trump, and they've thrown money ahead of themselves. So we've seen those $1 million checks signed and offered up to his inauguration. To me, it's a sign that he's really completed a takeover. So MAGA land, congratulations. It seems as though a lot of the misguided information that populates all these platforms is going to be accompanied by more misguided information, outright propaganda and lies, and it's effective. It absolutely is effective. Musk does the same thing on X. He got rid of all of the people who were monitoring content. That was one of the first things he did when he took over the X platform, and now he just counts on the community notes. That's what happens on X. And finally, there are restrictions specifically targeted that are now removed around topics like gender identity, immigration. Zuckerberg says those restrictions around immigration and gender identity, just to name two. They are, quote, out of touch with mainstream discourse. So this is a fascinating, I think, pivot point and inflection point in American politics and information. And so I think this is big, big news. And again, Zuckerberg is saying, hey, those fact-checking partners, they're the problem. They were being too tough on our creators, so we're getting rid of all of them now. That's the word out of the social media giant Meta. Remember, they own Instagram, they own WhatsApp, they own Threads, and they own Facebook. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah. Now, I wanted to quickly get back to Greenland, if I can. Do you have the Forbes thing? Because Trump says something, and then the rest of the world of right-wingers, they sane wash it. First of all, it's like, oh yeah, Greenland. Well, a lot of people have considered the situation with Greenland for many years now. There's nothing quite very unusual about Donald Trump mentioning it. And here is a way in which Steve Forbes, who did run for president once many years ago, he, of the wealthy Forbes family, he offers a practical approach to the way that America could acquire Greenland and Trump's dream to have Greenland could be realized. Go ahead, Albert, please.
President-elect Trump's efforts to buy Greenland from Denmark went nowhere in his first term and are no more likely to succeed in his second. Countries buying territory from other nations has been out of style for over a century. The last time we did it was with the Virgin Islands, which we purchased from Denmark in 1917. But here's how we can pull it off now and save money as well. Buying Greenland directly would cost tens of billions of dollars. The strategy is simple. Greenland declares its independence from Denmark. In fact, the current Prime Minister of Greenland has stated his desire to do just that. A referendum could come as soon as this April. The next step is the big one. Have Greenland then apply for statehood. Voila, the deed is done. There is precedent here. Texas broke away from Mexico in 1836, becoming a separate nation. Several years later, it became our 28th state. The advantages for everyone are clear. It's true, Denmark would be left feeling like a sports team losing a big player to free agency, since it would no longer be getting a huge bundle of cash from Uncle Sam. But Copenhagen would no longer be liable for its annual subsidy of around $600 million a year to this humongous island of 56,000 people.
Okay.
Nor would Denmark be on the hook.
Yeah. Okay. So you begin to see, as I say, the sane washing of Trump and the way in which Forbes is a kind of a mainstream conservative, how he has now come into the Trump fold just in as much as he's coming up with a strategy for the acquisition of this thing that the incoming president wants. We'll talk more about it, but I just thought that was interesting, both Trump's reflexive desire to get back to the Greenland thing, which he mentioned in the press conference today, including taking it by military force, and then the ways in which the conservative movement, not the MAGA movement, Forbes is not a MAGA guy, rides into, as I say, both sane wash and offer a quote, reasonable strategy for proceedings. So,
The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, there's a lot going on this day. It's one of those days that is filled with breaking news of one sort or another involving Jack Smith, Eileen Cannon, the final report that will be issued from the special counsel office, and it's just worked out that we get to talk to a magnificent resource and that we visit with regularly on the show. I should say who we read, not that we. He's an actual person. The Pulitzer Prize winner and now professor at RIT and the co-founder of DCReport.org. Put it together for the great David K. Johnston, everybody.
Hello, Mark.
Hello, sir.
And I'm glad you're not joining the movement to reduce human beings from who to that which applies to objects.
Thank you. That's exactly it. I caught myself. So David K. Johnston, you're just the guy to perhaps sort out what's happening. It appears that, of course, Jack Smith had to step away from his special counsel role in seeing these various legal proceedings through because of the new incoming administration. But prior to doing that, I guess he issues a final report. It's something that is not that unusual, is it, David?
No, these reports are routinely made public. The special counsel is required by statute and regulation to produce a report of what he did. So it'd be 2 reports in this case. That's why it's 2 volumes, one on the Washington, D.C. insurrection case and one on the stolen national security documents case. The Attorney General can withhold that if he chooses, and he can also redact, that is, withhold some information. And the legal thread on which this is being withheld now by Judge Eileen Cannon is that there are 2 other defendants in the Florida case, employees of Donald Trump, and that they claim they will be harmed by the release of this. The absurdity of it is that on January 20th, the Justice Department will drop those cases. So the obvious question here is, why didn't the Justice Department already dismiss those cases, which would allow for release of the report? And this is where Merrick Garland and Jack Smith, being absolute Boy Scouts, just like Robert Mueller, is not serving the public interest. When you're dealing with a career criminal, playing by the rules is just not going to, by strict adherence to the rules, is not going to get you anywhere. They could have released this report already, but of course, you give the other side an opportunity to see the report. And the lawyers, I'm sure, for Donald Trump had a heart attack when they saw this. We have very good reason to believe the report would show that the first Trump administration and allies of Donald Trump were involved up to their eyeballs in orchestrating the attack on the Capitol. They may have even funded directly or indirectly by asking people to funnel money to bring people to the Capitol. And unfortunately, Eileen Cannon has proven that she has no respect for her oath of office. She has no business being a federal judge. And unless something unexpected happens, we will probably never see what Jack Smith reported, at least through official sources, because you can be assured, even though it would be a crime to do so, that once the Trump administration is in office, people who work for Donald, who after all had no compunctions about trying to overthrow the government, will just destroy the records. Notice that Trump repeatedly accuses Democrats of destroying records when they have not. That tells you his thought process.
Yeah, and I'll remind everybody that Eileen Cannon dismissed this documents case in its entirety this summer. And what lingers is this, as you've suggested, David K. Johnston, the cases against these other people who were associated with the documents case. And so it's on that she's hanging, keeping this all quiet and forgetting about this final report because it would jeopardize those cases. That's the general argument?
Yes, that their rights as defendants are being compromised. And the problem is those cases will be dismissed shortly after noon on January 20th. I mean, frankly, I think Eileen Cannon is despicable. I can't, and I'm being polite here. Her behavior has been atrocious from the beginning. In her very first decision or document she put out in the stolen documents case, she said Donald Trump should get special treatment, which is exactly the opposite of law, tradition, and Supreme Court rulings up until that point, that no, the president is not special. And this has been consistent all the way through. And of course, Donald appointed her, and he has publicly said he will appoint her to the Supreme Court. If that isn't a quid pro quo bribe in advance, I guess I don't know what a bribe is.
Yeah, she might exceed Clarence Thomas in her fealty to Trump. I mean, it's a remarkable thing, and it's
and she would be worse than Clarence Thomas, Mark. I mean, it's hard to imagine a justice of the U.S. Supreme Court worse than Clarence Thomas, but
yeah, that's why I say she'd exceed him. I think in terms of her fealty, and I don't need to read the facts. I can tell you what the decision is already, type thing. The last thing, and then I want to move and get back to J6 for a second, but the last thing I just wanted to follow up. I mean, this is immensely disturbing, the point that you made, which is that you think it very likely that we really will never see this report from Jack Smith in an official way.
Yeah, in an official way. I mean, do I think there may be somebody who improperly, if you're going to be very technical about the law, has a copy of it squirreled away somewhere? But we will not see it from the Trump administration. And Donald Trump, by the way, I don't think many people know this. He has a long history of documents disappearing. David Sirota, who publishes The Lever, was once a Capitol Hill aide. That's how I got to know him. He was looking for a Trump document once, and he came to me because I have the largest repository, or at least did at the time, of Trump documents, certainly the largest repository of pre-presidential documents. And I didn't have the document he wanted. And he had the resources, fortunately, to do some research. And finally, somebody working for him, I think in an obscure courthouse in Illinois, found a copy of this document that had disappeared. And I have searched in the past for certain Trump documents that should be there, and they're gone. So Donald has a history of magically disappearing documents, just as he has a history of, seeing to it that court cases go before certain judges like his sister. Right. And we need to understand that, the next president of the United States is a criminal. I don't believe, by the way, he's qualified. I don't know why the Democrats decided not to raise this, but the 14th Amendment says that if you participated in or just aided an insurrection, you cannot be president of the United States. Now, you might lose on that argument, but I'm floored that the Democrats didn't try to raise it. And part of the problem here is that it's the old story of you don't bring a knife to a gunfight. Here, the Democrats seem to bring a pocket knife to a gunfight.
Well, that's exactly right. I mean, we've talked about it at length on this show. Just to let you know, on other days we've talked about this 14th Amendment. We've spoken with Jessica Denson, who's the former Trump staffer, who is leading up the big effort in Washington to bring attention to this. It is extraordinary, as you say. You don't have to win the argument, but you can make noise in making the argument. You can remind people, as you've just suggested and you've just done. I mean, when you talk about monies flowing and being funneled into various organizations, the Proud Boys involved in J6. I mean, these white supremacist to white nationalist groups, this was a coalition of some very disturbing people who continue to be powers in America. And the idea is that by bringing this forward, you remind people of what this is all about. I, too, was astounded that it wasn't brought up.
Well, if Donald Trump follows through on his promise and pardons the insurrectionists, here's the headline you unfortunately are not going to read on the front page of the New York Times, where I worked for many years, and other newspapers. Trump frees more than 1,000 violent felons. But that's what he's about to do. He's going to take 1,000 violent felons, people who attacked law enforcement. And I find one of the most astonishing things about the Trump era that all sorts of law enforcement organizations support Donald Trump, a man who literally sent people to attack police. 6 or 7 officers have died. There have been suicides, heart attacks since this event. And to any police officer who goes, well, those were unconnected, he had a heart attack later. I'm sorry, have you noticed how many police officers get pensions because they've had a heart attack and the stress of their job? Listen to the repeated testimony of several of the Capitol police officers who have said that their PTSD, which they thought they had conquered from being soldiers, has come back, that they're tortured by nightmares all the time, and that they're also deeply offended that they risked their lives to protect members of Congress and the Vice President of the United States. And then Donald Trump calls these people, heroes and hostages, and calls January 6th a day of love.
Yeah, the J6 reimagining that is going to go on under the Trump administration is something I did want to touch on with you, because you're patient so well. I just feel as though the effort, I was mentioning this in the first hour, and I think I mentioned it before. I mean, I hate to use the Hitler parallel, and I'm not using it from the standpoint of his particular brand of fascism and genocide that proceeded after he took power. But prior to him taking power, he was involved. Was it the beer putsch thing where his thugs took on the Weimar Republic at the time, and they got into it, and he was then jailed. That's when he wrote Mein Kampf, and then he got out. And he, when he got to power, turned that whole square where the whole thing went down, where his thugs went after the cops, he turned that into a completely inverse thing, where it was a celebration of freedom fighters. I feel as though I'm seeing the same movie played out here with Trump.
Yeah. The parallels to how Hitler came to power are extraordinary. The only significant difference being that Hitler served prison time for his crimes against the German government. Donald, who's committed many, many, many crimes that I've written about, did not serve any time. And that's the only difference. And remember, Hitler came to power through legal means. That's what Trump is doing here. And it's what's crucial in understanding Donald is he has no regard for anyone else. I want Greenland. Well, maybe we'll take it with military force. I mean, you saw Forbes, who's a gold bug, the whole world would be better if we went back on the gold standard, arguing that this is a perfectly reasonable thing to do, never mind sovereign territory. The mindset of Donald Trump and Steve Forbes is not that much different than that of Putin, who goes, I want Ukraine, and I have a government in Kyiv that isn't friendly to me, therefore I'll send and kill many, many Russians in an effort to recapture and then go on and recapture other countries. This is not useful to peace. And, think about this right now. U.S. troops are not involved in any combat anywhere in the world. We have far and away the strongest economy in the world. Nobody comes close to us in the strength of our economy. 16 million jobs added under Joe Biden. Even before the economy collapsed, Trump was not even close to half that number. We have real wage growth. The bottom half of workers in America got a 20% larger increase in their income than the country as a whole on average, which is a major change under Joe Biden. We have all these infrastructure projects. We have at least 700,000 manufacturing jobs that have been created since Biden took office. And I think you're now going to see Donald Trump go and ruin all of that, but he's going to keep telling people, oh, the economy was a mess. I inherited this terrible economy. And his ally in this are gullible reporters who don't do their research. There was a big story in the LA Times yesterday, and I wrote to the reporter who wrote it, a very nice, friendly letter with some constructive criticism about how terribly expensive eggs are in LA where you live. Roughly in round numbers, $10 for a dozen eggs. Well, yesterday in Rochester, New York, I bought a dozen extra large, cage-free organic eggs. That's the most expensive category around for $4.49. Why? Well, it turns out that we've killed 1 in 4 laying hens in America. If you get rid of 1/4 of the laying hens, prices will go up. But here's the killer that the LA Times referred to a government document I went and then read. In Oregon, they killed 1 in 400 laying hens because of avian flu. Here in Rochester, my market, Western New York, essentially none. In California, they killed 1 in 4. So there's a 100-time larger kill rate for laying hens in California. And yet, when I listen to national radio, including NPR, what do I hear? Oh, egg prices are through the roof. No, they're through the roof in a couple of key markets, and for reasons that have nothing to do with the current administration. But that will be rewritten by the Trump people to Joe Biden pushed up the price of eggs, just as January 6th is being rewritten into a day of love.
Well, it is such a great point that rewriting facts can survive, particularly in this specific environment at this moment in time. I just was sharing with everybody the fact that Facebook, Meta, has decided to pull all of their fact checkers from all of their platforms. So Instagram, Threads, and Facebook. Of course, they own WhatsApp too, but that's not a social posting. They no longer will fact check anyone. So it's a true high-profile concession to an incoming administration that has survived, in fact, has succeeded in retaking power based on propaganda that has been totally factless.
Well, let me give you another one that's happened to me. If any of you follow my Twitter account, David CAYJ, you will see that there are posts to various places saying things I would never say, endorsing Bitcoin and things like that. Somebody hacked my account. They changed the credentials. So I go to the help center at X and I ask for help to get my account back. And I gotten now, I think 8 times a boilerplate message. Sorry, we can't verify who you are. We know that you're upset, but you could open another account. Well, my concern is, no, this person is using the account to cause me harm. They have no mechanism for, and there's nothing on their webpage that says, if you can't get into your account because somebody changed the credentials, here's what you do. Well, give a little thought to that. This could happen to a lot of people. So I could walk away from Twitter and the internet be flooded with comments under my name that I never made, and they're not doing anything about it. Because in this new era, facts and the higher level of truth, small t truth, not revealed truth from God, but factual truth, have no meaning unless they serve the aims of a wannabe dictator. And people should be very concerned. Can you trust things? I mean, my wife showed me a really cute picture on the internet and said, this can't be accurate. It's a mother owl with a bunch of owls inside a flower. And I said, no, it has to be AI because the lignin in the plant stem couldn't support all that weight. But it was a beautiful picture. And the AI technology and other things allow this falsehood, fakery, and places like the policy that Elon Musk has that I've run into, they actually help people who are causing damage. They are on the side of bad guys. We are moving from virtuous policies to vicious policies.
I like that you mentioned AI because the whole nature of fact will be enhanced and amplified with a new kind of perversion of truth, which is pictures and videos that are literally concocted. It's not even an adaptation of an actual event. It's completely invented events. It's
Right.
already happening with audio and video, and the picture example is a good one. This is interesting from Glenda, who says, we need to see Jack Smith's report. Garland can vindicate himself by releasing it to the public. He blew the opportunity for us to get rid of Trump forever. Of course, it's true that Garland has totally been a horror show. But I'm wondering
And
if
at the moment, Garland
Yeah.
can't release it because he's under a federal court order.
Right, exactly. So now you're really beholden, or you're being held hostage, if you want to think of it this way, and you want that report, by a legal mechanism that has to proceed in a specific way, which will, as you said, preclude really the release of that report in any official way. The timetable is just too short, right?
As soon as Pam Bondi, the woman who, when she was investigating Trump University, received an illegal $25,000 campaign contribution to an affiliate of her campaign from Trump's charity, and her spokesperson defended that, even though it's totally illegal. As soon as she becomes Attorney General, there will be no effort to release this report, no matter what. It's in their discretion of the new administration. So this is just an absolute political tragedy. And if somebody who has an illicit copy of this does release it, you can be sure the full weight of the federal prosecutorial system will come down on their heads. They'll be investigated to the ends of the earth, and whoever publishes it will undoubtedly be prosecuted.
Oh yeah, it could be a Bradley Manning thing that happens to them. I mean, it could be, if it's an unauthorized leak. Steve says corporate media may not report it, but there are lots of Substack and probably also ProPublica will report it. So he's saying, look, it'll get out there. Yeah, but there is a patient zero. There's somebody who has to release that report, who has access to it. And David's saying the full
You can't
weight
report
of
on a document you don't have.
Yeah. And there you
And
are.
I say that as someone who most of my career was built with documents.
Yeah, but you used a Freedom of Information Act request, I think, to get
Actually,
a lot of
I
this
almost never use the Freedom of Information Act.
Oh, is that right?
I
Well,
would
what was
cajole people. Yeah, 'cause I have a request from 1989 that still hasn't been fulfilled by
Right,
the
it does
FBI.
take
By the way,
too long.
that's something that as soon as the new administration comes in, I can tell you one area they're going to cut. The staffs who handle Freedom of Information Acts, where it's not uncommon to go 10 years till you can get what you want. They're going to cut those staffs. And, we have to save money. We can't afford this.
Well, that is the way in which they're going to do a lot of things, right, David? They're just going to sap a lot of these institutions, the EPA, et cetera, of money, of funding. We need to regulate these social media platforms. The algorithms should not exist in the shadows, says Silicon Valley blocks. This is another thing, though, I do want to touch on it with you, because the effort to break up these clear monopolies, Google, Meta, et cetera, that was something that was being pursued by the Biden administration. They didn't get enough credit for it. And Lena Khan, of course, had a well thought out and described way in which Google could be, and here we are on a Google platform, YouTube, saying this. I hope this survives my comments, survives the day. But she had a real plan to break up Google, to break up this clear monopoly. So these other monopolies exist. Now, because they're being broken up, don't you think, David, the Bezoses of the world, the Zuckerbergs of the world, the Disneys of the world, they throw themselves at Trump with money and with fealty. Look at the new deal that Melania just got from Bezos to have a movie done. It's a $40 million film. These are all efforts, I think, to sort of stave off any kind of federal breakup or regulation of the entities that they're in charge of.
Yeah, what you're seeing here is the structural corruption of the federal government and the seemingly legal ways to pay off people, like the Melania Trump movie deal. And the owners of these companies, the controlling owners like Jeff Bezos, if they think this will protect them, that they have groveled in front of Donald Trump, it will, up until Donald Trump decides that it's not in his use to be nice to them anymore. This is what the rule of law is supposed to be about. We are creating a new administration that is about a person, Donald Trump. It is not about respect for the rule of law. And he's going to, roam free, because who's going to stop him? His own Justice Department, Supreme Court majority. He's going to roam free. And the biggest thing we can hope for is that, one, the Democrats keep pointing things out and do so in a more forceful way than they have. And secondly, that Donald manages to abandon enough of his promises and do enough economic damage that voters turn on him. But of course, he still has all sorts of weapons at his disposal to suppress the vote, to suspend the privilege of habeas corpus, to do all sorts of damage in his mission, which is Donald believes that he's the only person qualified to run the country. And he should be just like Putin and Xi and MBS. He should be above accountability, above the law.
He's accusing the Biden administration now of being very difficult when it comes to facilitating a transition, which is one of the richest things I think although it's in a competition with other rich things that are said. Quote, Biden is doing everything possible to make the transition as difficult as possible, from lawfare, such as has never been seen before, to costly and ridiculous executive orders on the Green New scam and other money-wasting hoaxes. Fear not, these orders, in quotes, will all be terminated shortly, and we will become a nation of common sense and strength. MAGA, exclamation point, 3 times over.
There's no indication anywhere the Biden administration has done anything but be cooperative, with one item Donald could complain about, but I don't think legitimately. When you are an incoming administration, you have to sign agreements to protect national security and to do background checks on people. And Trump has been trying to refuse that. They apparently have signed some of them. But there are people he wants to put in positions of power. Tulsi Gabbard as National Security Director, the odious Sebastian Gorka, whom I've debated on radio and TV in London, who you may recall wore to Trump's inauguration a uniform that he said was a historic clothing, but it was in fact the uniform of the Nazi sympathizers in World War II in Hungary, his native land. And he has to be polite to say, a dubious doctoral degree. These people are not friends of the United States. And what's going to happen over time, and maybe very quickly, is other countries are not going to share important secrets with us. If Kash Patel shuts down and removes the FBI people who are in charge of counterintelligence, that's just an invitation to terrorists and hostile foreign governments to do terrible things in America. And I don't think the American people will wake up to that unless some incidents happen and the news media avoids falling into, well, the government says this happened yesterday, and recognizes that, these were things that could have been avoided and prevented. You're going to have a lot of military officers and prosecutors who are going to face very soon. Are you going to behave in a principled way, or having kids in college and a mortgage, are you going to knuckle under to the illegal orders of Donald Trump and his minions? And sadly, we know from human experience that some people will stand up and they will be mercilessly gone after. And those who don't, well, we won't hear about them. We'll just see the foul fruits of their decisions.
Dystopian says this, there were reports yesterday with Democracy Now! About how the military and the cops have been infiltrated by militias. I mention that because on the heels of what you've just said, there is a part of the military that doesn't view the oath they take to the Constitution first as necessarily the top priority. I mean, these white nationalist cells do exist in the military in larger numbers than we'd like. I mean, we wouldn't like it at all, but I mean, apparently it's a growing number.
And particularly in the Air Force. 25 years ago, stories began to appear in various places, including the New York Times, about how if you were Jewish or a non-believer or held the views of certain sects within Christianity, your career as an officer would be stymied and you'd be sidelined. And very little was done to address this. By the way, the story about infiltrating the militias, I believe, came from ProPublica and was simply cited on Democracy Now! But there are real serious problems here. And as I've said on your show in the past, if Donald Trump starts firing generals and admirals, that is the classic sign that a military dictatorship is in the work.
Mr. Johnston, says Kurt, X is owned by a man who has no integrity. Your account was probably hacked by the owner himself to silence you. That's interesting.
I don't know if it was done by him. I have been the target of past efforts that I'm pretty sure came from Russians. If you see something in your feed somewhere that has a name and then 8 little digits after it, that's the internal billing code in some cases for the Russian bot farms. You get paid for the amount of provable successes that you had. And, I, like many people, have gotten letters in the mail saying, your account at this place was compromised. And people who are professionals at this, amateurs like me on internet security, are never going to win against them, even if you do everything you're supposed to do. Two-factor identification, things like that.
And CC Ryder says, right-wing media, huge infrastructure sold Trump to the base, normalized him, provided cover for his corruption. Christian TV, 700 Club, CBN, TBN, Daystar, etc., all repeat Fox talking points. Yeah,
how fascinating that we have a goes-to-mass Catholic in the White House who speaks in moral terms, being succeeded by a man who has denigrated Christians as fools and idiots and schmucks, whose own public comments show he has no idea what's in the Bible, and who in his comments every day establishes that he doesn't believe in any tenet of Christianity, which is based on sacrifice and regard for the other, particularly the poor and those who've been maimed or disabled. Donald didn't want soldiers who had been lost a limb or were disfigured anywhere near him because he said they're ugly and it makes him look bad. This man has no regard. And you know, Mark, I'm really trying hard to get that concept back into our society. Regard. If you don't have regard for others, others are not going to have regard for you. We need to respect the rights of the people we detest the most. I've defended people whose speech I thought was unbelievably odious because they have a right to say. On the other hand, when they've then tried to make money off it by promoting frauds against the government based on their ideology, I've exposed those people because that's a different issue. That's committing frauds, not just expressing your belief or opinion.
Trump doesn't want flags at half-mast during his inauguration. That was a bizarre thing, on the heels of Carter's passing.
I hope there are some cameras trained on flags around the Capitol, because it wouldn't surprise me if Trump has issued an order that the moment he's finished taking his oath of office, they're to run those flags back up to the top.
Wow. Well, that would
I don't know that it will happen, but it wouldn't surprise me one bit.
We're going to be talking about Trudeau right after we're done here. And so in our last minute with you, there is someone who has wanted you to comment on Trudeau. Michael D. says, Mark, please ask David if Trudeau's resignation has any Trump connection. Did you see anything in all of the
No,
Trudeau
and I do
stuff?
want to do one thing when we finish this for just a moment, if you'll indulge me.
Please.
Trudeau's been premier for 10 years. In a democracy, that's a long run. I mean, Putin's been running Russia in one way or another for more than 25 years because he's a de facto dictator. And so the mood in Canada has shifted, as happens, and the Conservatives are doing better right now. And so, no, I don't think that that's the case. I think the record on Trudeau has shown he's been pretty good. If you'll indulge me, I want to show you something.
Yeah, please go.
I'm a very optimistic guy. I often say nobody has 8 children in the modern world unless they're an incurable optimist. This is a painting you often see on your show, a little bit of it in the background that hangs over our mantle. It's 2 people walking on the clouds over a city down below.
Yeah.
And my wife and I like to think that's us.
Oh, that's sweet.
Walking up there on the clouds above the world. Be optimistic. Don't withdraw from the process. Don't turn off the news. We got through the Civil War. We can get through Trump, hopefully, but we will not get through it if people just go, I'm fed up. I don't want anything to do with this anymore. That's giving in, and that's saying, I don't want myself or my children or my grandchildren or the progeny I will never know to live in freedom.
I'm so, frankly, uplifted by that, because coming from you, hip deep in all the nasty that is Trump, there is maybe a real light at the end of a pretty dark tunnel, because the conspiracy that has succeeded, bringing us Trump and this administration more dangerous than his first, can leave you in a pretty bleak place.
Right.
But I thank you for that, because I think we should try to be hopeful. And hey, we'll count on you to help us.
Talk to you next week, Mark.
Thank you, David K. Johnston, everybody. Right on.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Shadow Stevens. This is the Mark Thompson Show. Keep it to yourself.
Who's Mark Thompson?
What up, everybody? It is our Tuesday show. It's such a pleasure always to talk to Pulitzer Prize winner David K. Johnston. Such great takes, and even a bonus bit today with sort of an uplifting message at the end. If you've missed anything, we'll drop it as a separate video. And we touched on Trudeau and what's going on in Canada. And we wanted to just get a word more about what's going on in Canada with our friend who is a longtime writer and journalist in the Bay Area. Now he's up in Northwestern Territories in Washington, but right across the border from Canada. And his family actually is active in the Canadian government. So he has a connection and sort of, if you will, something of an inside perspective on what's going on with Trudeau. How about it for Bill Mann, everyone? Yeah. Look at
Thank
you,
you.
Bill Mann. Nice to see you. So,
Good to
Bill,
see you.
what about the Trudeau move? It comes amidst a pressure on his administration. Give us a sense, us dirty Americans, about what's happening in Canada, if you would, please.
Well, Trudeau has been under attack from the conservatives in Parliament, and for some time, and it's starting to work. And there is as you know, an anti-incumbent wave sweeping the globe, not just Canada. Trudeau has been in office for 9 years. He's never had a majority government. He's had to borrow support from the NDP, which is left-wing and socialist. So he's always had a coalition government. And now that's fallen apart. Jagmeet Singh, who's the head of the NDP, pulled his support a couple weeks ago. And then Trudeau got into a spat with his finance minister. And that's kind of led to Monday's announcement that he was going to prorogue Parliament.
So
that means that.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Go ahead. No, I was just going to ask. I mean, because I think we think of our government and their government, Canada, is a very different one, right? It's a parliamentary government, is it not? I mean, so he has to form coalitions almost by definition.
Exactly. And proroguing Parliament, which means it's put on hold, it's not dismissed, means it gives him a couple of weeks, and the party and the Liberal Party gives them a couple of weeks to come up with a candidate. And there are a couple of 3, 4 who look pretty ready to do it right now. One of whom is his former deputy prime minister. And I really like this woman, Chrystia Freeland. She does not like Trump. Trump does not like her. So that's going in her ballpark. The other one is Mark Carney, not Art Carney, who was the former head of the Bank of Canada and the head of Bank of England. And he has hinted that he might come out of retirement to run for Parliament and prime minister. You don't have to be in Parliament to be prime minister, but you have a certain amount of time in which to win a local riding. In other words, you can be elected president of the United States, but you don't have to carry any states, but you've got a certain amount of time to carry, say, Connecticut. But it's a strange system, but the more I learn about parliamentary government, Mark, the more I like it.
Well, it forces a coalition, it forces a compromise, it seems, but it also can lead to no one philosophy taking the lead. You can end up with a kind of, I would think, and I don't. It's not that I would just think. I mean, I think you can see it in parliamentary governments worldwide, an inability sometimes to get things done. Now you could say the same thing about our government right now. So I'm not saying that we're the bee's knees. I'm just saying that parliamentary government's going to have their own deficits.
That's true, but if you want to get a parliament that's completely behind one idea, that is against this idiotic idea of Trump to try to make it a 51st state. You have no idea how much Canadians, A, dislike Trump, and B, dislike his idea of the 51st state. It ain't gonna happen.
Well, I mean, it's just, it's so absurd. It's the ugly American finally having taken power and, giving rise to and air and oxygen to all of that. Bill, I love talking to you, and I love that you're connected to the show. And so the last thing I would ask you on this Trudeau matter is, so those candidates that you mentioned, they're likely successors to Trudeau. Would that change the relationship that Canada would have with the U.S.? I mean, Trudeau had just finished, going to Mar-a-Lago to talk to Trump. It was rumored that was one of the things that he got a lot of blowback for when he went back to Canada. Is there some truth to that he got that blowback and that was a problem for him? But it sounds as though what you're saying is that he had one foot in the grave kind of already.
Yeah. When he went down to Mar-a-Lago to bend the knee, Canadians did not care for that one bit. And there was a lot of blowback on that. People did not Canadians did not care for that one bit. And so, you know, the last straws have been the last couple of weeks with Trudeau. It's been rather rough for him, but a couple of really strong candidates have emerged. And like I said, remember
will
the name,
that change the relationship between Canada and the U.S. in your judgment?
well,
Too early to
Chrystia
say,
Freeland, who was the Minister of Finance, she will do everything she can to fight any kind of tariffs or tariff war. I feel pretty confident about her. And Mark Carney is also a former head of the Bank of England and Bank of Canada. So you've got two pretty savvy candidates who are well versed in economics of world trade. So it may not be the worst time. I like Trudeau a lot. I always have. And my son is in the Liberal Party, my son in Vancouver. But either of these next two candidates, if they should get by the Conservatives, and I think they can, should be very good news for Americans as well.
Bill,
I can hardly wait to see who Trudeau.
Yeah.
I can hardly wait to see who Trump appoints ambassador to Canada.
Yeah, well, it probably, if it's somebody who's been to Canada at all, it would be an improvement on many who he's already appointed to critical positions. Stay in touch, Bill. We'll watch with interest, and thank you. Appreciate your takes. Talk soon. Bill Mann, everybody.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I must tell you, it's been a hot and cold running guest today. I'm loving it. We got a lot of news about the situation with Jack Smith's report into the first part of the show. If you missed any of it, feel free to check it out. We'll also drop it as a separate video. I also wanted to mention that the David K. Johnston conversation around that will obviously be dropped as a separate video as well. Feel free to share that. There is, it's interesting, in our crew, there are Canadians as well, and there are also somebody in Denmark, I think, was saying that they're a fan of parliamentary government as well because it forces these coalitions. That's what I was saying. But it can either force those coalitions successfully or it can create weaknesses, and ultimately the people suffer because their voice is not being heard. There it is. We have parliament in Denmark, and it, quote, forces the coalition parties to work together in the things they agree on for the common good. Yeah, it does force that. And I'm sure you can give me examples of times in which it has worked successfully, but I'd also offer that sometimes these parliamentary governments, I'll give you here's a good example. Israel is a parliamentary government, okay? So you can see how an extreme religious faction in Israel, okay, I don't know what it's the most religious arm of the parliament. They have a coalition and a group that is needed to retain power. So you have to throw a bone to these extreme religious people who are for what is widely regarded by many in the public in Israel as too aggressive a posture toward Palestinian land or to Gaza or to West Bank or whatever you want to, you fill in the blank. But the deeply religious people are of the view that, hey, this is all ours. It was left to us by God, and etc. So that is a parliamentary government that is, if you will, being held hostage by or having to mollify, take care of, satisfy these extreme religious factions that represent a small sliver of what actual Israelis really want. The Israeli population is far more moderate. So that's a contemporary example I would offer to you of a parliamentary government being, again, compromised by extremists. So, again, I think we can go back and forth as to the best form of government. They all have flaws, but I would say that's an example of a flaw, and a contemporary example of that. On David K. Johnston, teacher Lori says, you both, Mark and David, are fortunate to have the privilege to do that. The painting comment, to be optimistic, is what she's saying. Some of us, for various reasons, do not have that. We are trapped by whatever hits us in the next 4 years.
Why are you yelling?
Okay, I get that, Lori. I think for psychological health, David K. Johnston was pointing to something that he felt we should be mindful of. That's all. I get it. Many people are in very dire circumstance. You know how I feel about the incoming administration. I think it's horrifying. Absolutely horrifying. I'm a tree hugger, as you may or may not know, and trees need hugging. And environmental toxins are infiltrating every part of our environment. You're seeing it played out in every way. Even the bird flu is because of factory farming. So as all of this happens, we're getting administration in that will bring the darkest environmental days of the modern era to America. So this is not to mention the fact that you have an existential threat that is not being viewed seriously. I'm talking about the climate crisis. So that's just on the environment. So I can live in that space, or we can try to look to ways in which we can make enough noise about things that policy modifications might actually follow. Or we can just say, oh man, I'm effed. Look at me. It's easier for you guys to be, but look at me. All right, I get it. I mean, everybody's individual situation may dictate a different attitude toward things. And I don't invalidate yours in the least, but I don't think it's fair for you to necessarily, and to be fair to you, you might just be pointing out, hey, I'm really screwed and I feel bad and this is my cry in the night. And if that's the case, fine. But if you are saying, hey, how dare you be at all optimistic or positive because I'm screwed and there are a lot of people like me, okay, I think that that's an extreme take and I understand it, but I would say I don't necessarily think it's particularly helpful. I get it. It's a 5-alarm fire. We all feel that way. So you're not going to get any pushback here, but I do think it's worth noting that there may be things we can make enough noise about in the right ways that even Trump might be able to reverse and might be able to modify certain key policy positions. Mark, can you drop a separate video for JL? Yes, absolutely. The JL video will be dropped by Albert. Albert is completely up to that job. In fact, he's already probably got it underway.
Albert, thank you.
He is amazing that way. Thanks for turning me on to J.L. Coven. Not only funny, but politically brilliant, says Linda Galdieri. I agree. Just terrific. And he will be back, is the best news. James Carville is wrong, C.C. Ryder says. James Carville is wrong.
Why are you yelling?
When he says we need to stop talking about Trump. BS, James Carville. Dems' silence will only feed the GOP whitewashing of history, says C.C. Ryder. I agree. Of course, I agree. I mean, to me, it's absurd anyway. Is that what James Carville said, that we should stop talking about Trump? I'm sure he said it in some way in which he's saying, because he has this general position that Democrats talk about Trump, but they ignore their message to the people. I don't know about that. I think if you could have dirtied up Trump more, you might have made some inroads. After all, how did the Republicans win? You can tell me it was the economy. You can tell me it was the Afghanistan withdrawal, whatever. No, I don't buy that. I think there is something about Trump, his smack talking to the establishment, even though he is completely establishment. Look at the people around him. They are all totally establishment. He is putting in power the biggest group of billionaires and millionaires who have ever occupied any administration in history. It is the wealthiest group of people to ever take power in America. And The idea somehow that he would rail against the establishment, dude, look around. You are the establishment. But I think that when he rails against the elites and all that, he is the elite. David Sachs, all these guys out of Silicon Valley, these billionaires who came to those rallies and propelled his candidacy successfully. You could have pointed to those people. You could have pointed to at least the fact that there was a complete absurdity to what he was saying. Again, though, it's how you message, who is messaging. So the idea James Carville has that you shouldn't talk about Trump, I disagree with that. I mean, he's saying you should focus on what people care about, which is the economy. I mean, again, take a look. It's all messaging. The economy is a mixed bag. It's the most successful economy in the world right now. Everything from stock market, interest rates, the employment numbers, GDP, lead the world out of COVID, the inflation numbers. But you can find someone like Teacher Lori, who is a regular in our chat, who goes, her own situation clearly is a dire one. As the cost of everything does go up, you can leave a lot of people behind, even as there is economic prosperity for some. But I would say it's all how you communicate. Look at how Trump communicates, recklessly. He just makes these statements. Worst economy ever. We've never had an economy this bad. Worst corruption ever. We've never had a government so corrupt. Whatever he says. He just states it and keeps stating it with an emphatic tone, and it's swallowed by people who are angry at the system. All of us feel the system has let us down in some way. But when hurricanes hit, when fires hit, as is happening in California right now with the high winds and the fire danger, who is coming to help you? Government. This is why FEMA exists. By the way, created by Jimmy Carter. But the things that government can do, those things are important. And I hate just essing all over government, which is kind of what the Trump people do and MAGA does. Reagan, I think, was a big reason for that. I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. I get it. Government is filled with issues, but government is also filled with those mechanisms, I think, to keep us in a cleaner environment and a better environment and an environment that protects consumers. I'm just talking about a societal environment now, not a literal environment. So that the Consumer Protection Agency, the EPA, these are agencies that have the ability to help us and protect us. But if you view every regulation as an encumbrance, as a burden, as a weight, then you don't get that. You get rid of all the regulations, all those protections, and you'll have a toxification of everything. Air, water, soil, consumer rights. People will be able to run roughshod over you. You and your ability to get a fair trial. That's being undermined. So I see this as an inflection point, and I think this is a point at which we have to make noise as a populace. And so we make some noise here. There are obviously platforms with much, broader and bigger megaphones that are making noise as well, because they're making noise. So if you want their noise to be the only noise that you hear, then kick it, man. Sit back and go, yeah, we're screwed. Nothing to do. All right. And this, Kurt says, the Mark Thompson Show for the 99th time. They cheated. There were 90 bomb threats sent across all 7 swing states, during which time MAGA operatives posing as poll workers used Starlink to hack. I mean, that is one conspiracy theory. Now, it's not a conspiracy that there were bomb threats. That's absolutely true. I mean, what Kurt is saying is true. The Starlink thing becomes less demonstrably the case, but as I've told you, I buy into it. I think it's very possible And I certainly buy in to the 14th Amendment. Mark, what noise? Our votes were sabotaged and gerrymandered, says Phineas. Yeah, when I talk about noise, I talk about noise you're making in the media. You know, emails you send, calls you make, conversations you have. This is noise. This is, it gets into the buzz. I mean, Trump is responsive to how he's perceived publicly. Don't lose track of that. So if there's enough that percolates to the surface, if there's enough pushback that is then played out in media, he does become aware of it. So, yeah, 14th Amendment, Section 3. I mean, I agree with you. I mean, I just don't understand how there was no noise made about the 14th Amendment, Section 3, about an adjudicated insurrectionist taking power. No noise made on the part of the Democrats. To me, that's just inexcusable. That's a political malpractice. So, please tell us you are safe from the fires, Mark. It looks bad, says Bird Loves Paint. I'll tell you, I'm not feeling safe from the fires. We lost our home to fires. I'll just finish up the show now with this. We lost our home to fire, as you're aware, and entire neighborhood burned. Now we've moved to a new neighborhood. I think getting out of this neighborhood will be easier. I mean, if we have to evacuate, which we may very well have to do. And if we do, we'll post something on the channel to let you know if there are any hiccups in our ability to do the show. But we have pretty bad PTSD also from all of this. I mean, Courtney and I get very, very nervous when the wind starts blowing, but it's more than nervousness. It's some anxiety that really cuts to your core. So that's what we're going through now. But thank you for asking. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
I only wish we could continue longer, Albert. We haven't heard much from you today. And that's what saddens me about today's show. Yeah.
Lots of guests today.
Yeah, we had lots of guests. It is true.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah. But we are going to break out all of the videos today, all of our guests, and hopefully that'll let you who miss anything visit it and catch up on stuff. Also, I did want to mention, sorry, I'm trying to, the technical part of today, there's so many screens going, I'm just trying to keep up with things, but I'm anxious to tell you about tomorrow's show. John Rothman joins tomorrow. I think we also have another special guest tomorrow as well. And Tom Hartman joins next week. We have a very big group of guests coming up. So now, Shadow.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
We continue to think about our Kim, and there'll be no after party.
Bye-bye.
So this is it, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. Until tomorrow. Bye-bye.